Whoa. Okay, wake up. All right. So today we will be talking about does this book still exist? The Medical School Admission Requirements, MSAR. Is this still a thing? Do they
It
not have?
exists over like online, so they have like the GPAs and MCATs and like other stats of schools online. But I don't know if that's like maybe like if they've changed the MSAR from when you had that book from. But yeah, mainly it's just kind of just like has like a bunch of stats about like all the med schools, all the MD schools at least.
Okay, so this is from 2010, back when things were printed on paper. Now, Shri, would we be able to see you at all? For
Um,
aesthetic purposes?
yes, I'm still in the
Oh,
lab.
look, this is like authentic. I like this. Very good. No, I think that this is really great. This is what a hustler looks like, people multitasking. I am assuming because this is a pre-med and at some summers I have current med students program that everybody is interested at least somewhat in going to medical school. I do not know anything about DO schools. I do not know anything about NP schools. I know a little bit about PA schools because when I got my master's degree in biology, a lot of that graduate work was in the same classes as the PA school. So, but I wouldn't profess to be an expert in physician assistant programs or anything, but I guess I don't know zero about it. And then other podiatry. Well, I did say I was going to say this, and that was a good segue. So there are doctor specialties that the general population doesn't realize that you don't have to go to medical school for. So the very obvious one is psychiatrist and psychologist. So can everybody please shout out which one of those two goes to medical school?
Psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist.
Yes. Okay. Good. Now we have podiatrist and somebody's joining. Riley, take a screenshot. Well, I guess orthopedic surgeon would kind of give it away, or podiatrist. Which one goes to medical school?
Orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah, but they both operate on feet or can. Another one is an optometrist or an ophthalmologist. Which one goes to medical school? Now I'm getting
Ophthalmologist.
the ophthalmologist goes to medical school. Now, I don't know if this will be offensive to optometrists, but the way I remember it is the ophthalmologist is a longer word, so they go to school longer. But I could be wrong. I don't know how long optometrists go to school for, but that's just how I remember that. So the ophthalmologist, then that's a tricky word to spell. So if you're ever going to type it in an email or a letter, you should look it up first because even a lot of doctors don't spell it correctly. So the ophthalmologist goes to medical school, and then after medical school does a residency in ophthalmology. I couldn't imagine that optometry school could be any longer than that entire endeavor. But like I said, I don't know about nurse practitioner school. I don't know about DO school. I don't know about optometry school. I only know about medical school, which would entail psychiatry, ophthalmology, orthopedic surgery. So I don't know about podiatry school. That's a whole different ballgame. So if medical school isn't working out, there are other schools that you could go to. You could do physical therapy or occupational therapy. I know a little bit about physical therapy school because some of the physical therapists when I was in graduate school had the intermingled with the PA program and the graduate program. So we shared a lot of the same classes, but I wouldn't be able to tell you the admissions criteria. I only know about medical school. Well, I guess I know about master's degree in graduate school because I did that too. So I am assuming that all of you want to become doctors and go to medical school, so I can answer those questions. That this is just the disclaimer that when it comes to the other types of training, I didn't do that, so I don't know. But the criteria, so who knows like the test that which may be scored differently, but what are the letters? MCAT. Yes, MCAT, that's right. So the MCAT, back when I took it, back in the 80s, no, I'm just kidding. No, back when I took the MCAT, it was out of 45. So like basically, oh, Elizabeth just took the MCAT on Saturday. Well, bless your heart. That's nice that you're with us and not in some sort of coma, because that's intense. The MCAT when I took it was out of a score of 45, and basically getting around a 30 was like, what you wanted to aim for. Now my understanding, and Sri, or I guess, who's the person that just, see, I keep saying this, I can only see some chats and they only pop up for a second. Who just took it? Please speak and tell us your feelings and how much you loved it. Elizabeth, please tell us all about the MCAT, since it is more fresh in your mind than it is in mine.
Yeah, I don't know what the score, like the top score you can get is, but the average accepted
But that's what you
score,
got.
if only. The average accepted score is about a 504. Oh, someone said 528.
520. That is so like random. Like,
Mhm.
why not like 100 or 1,000? But 528 is the top score. That
Yeah.
is such a random score.
And
So 528, and you're saying that you need to get about 504?
yeah. And it's 4 sections. Each section you have an hour and a half. So for me, it was a 4-hour test because I go quickly. I did not sit
Back when I
still
took
that
it, it
whole
was
time.
8 hours long.
Oh,
It's still 8
Man.
hours. It's still 8 hours, yeah. Or it's like 7.5.
Did
yeah, I'm
Elizabeth
just
take
quick.
like the abbreviated version?
No.
Wait, if it's 4 sections and each is an hour and a half, you finished each section a half hour early?
Yeah, that was my average.
Okay, well, I don't know if you get bonus points for finishing it early, but I'm under the impression it is an 8-hour test. I would allot 8 hours. Well, Elizabeth, good for you. So you finish up early, and then you could go on to going back to writing your dissertation for your I'm sure that you're very busy. Well, that's impressive. So it is, I'm gonna still say it's 8 hours. So it's, the scoring has changed. You want to get about a 504. And there are 4 sections. Would you enlighten us about the topics of each section?
Yeah, there's a physics and biological processes.
Well, I'm glad they still have that.
Yeah,
I love physics. I'm sorry, but if I wasn't a doctor, I would be a theoretical physicist, because I was a physics tutor. I just think physics is like super cool, and everybody's like, wow, you're like lame. But I'm glad they still have physics on there. Continue.
there's cars, which is critical analysis of reading.
It has nothing to do with actual vehicles.
No. And then there's basically biochemistry and then psychology.
Wait, there's a whole section of psychology?
Yes.
Psychology and sociology, yeah.
Yeah.
Gee, that would have been nice for me back in the day, because I was a psych major. I had a writing minor, then I got another. I graduated early because I'm crazy and took like 24 credits every semester. And got a degree in biology, but I would have loved having psychology. No, when I took it, it was like chemistry, biology, physics, and then there was a writing sample. So do you guys still have to write anything, or is writing a thing of the past, just like paper? You guys got rid of paper, you got rid of writing. Who cares? Chat GPT does all the writing anyway. Okay, so there's no more writing. Okay. All right, so we're learning new things. So you guys are actually teaching me a little bit. So 504, it used to be about 30, but now 504 is the goal. The highest is 528, which seems like the most arbitrary, pulled out of a hat number I've ever heard in my life. And then 4 sections, and then one of them was CARS, which is an acronym for critical analysis something. thing. What was that?
Critical analysis and reasoning.
Okay. All right. Cars, physics, psychology / sociology, and what was the fourth?
Bio/biochem. So the first one is physics and chem. And then the cars is the second one, and then bio and biochem are kind of combined, and then psychology and sociology.
Is psychology and sociology the easiest? Because it sounds like it would be, but I feel like they could also trick you and make it real tricky.
I thought the cars was the easiest, but that's just because it doesn't have the weight of all of this extra knowledge that you need to have.
So you don't need to study that, just how they, okay. Ooh, memorization heavy. Well, that'll be okay. To recap, 4 sections. One is cars, another is psych and sociology, a third is physics and chemistry, and the last is chem and biochem. Wait, physics and
Bio and biochem.
okay, physics and chem, bio and biochem. Okay, sounds like fun. And now you don't have to write. I remember one of my essays was like, write about, do dogs have feelings? And like it was like deep. I was but you guys know. And talk about arbitrary scoring. The scoring was like a letter of the alphabet, and like N was like good or something. Like I don't know who sits around a table and they're like, we'll make 528 the highest and we'll make N a good score. Like I don't know. It would be just too easy if it was like on a scale to a 100, but you do not have to type out anything. It's all multiple choice.
Yes.
All right. Now, there are different graduate tests like the LSAT or the GRE. Now, my understanding, and again, these tests change, so it could be wrong, but the GRE, you don't like get points taken away if you get your answer wrong. What happens is if you get it right, they start asking you more difficult questions. I don't believe that's the case for the MCAT. For the MCAT, if you get it wrong, they take points, but if you get it wrong right, they give you points. So it is good to guess, because there are some tests. It's very important to know how these things are graded, because there are some tests where you don't get credit one way or the other if you don't answer it. And some tests, it's like if you leave it blank, then that goes against you. So for the MCAT, my understanding is that if you don't finish in time, you're not Elizabeth. If you run out of time, you should at least put something for every answer. Is that the case?
That's what I've heard, but
I believe so, yes.
I would definitely like look into that, because how the test is graded, knowing that is very important. When I took the prep, I took exam crackers and Kaplan. They explain to you how it is graded. So that's like an important thing to know. So we think that you should definitely not leave anything blank.
Yes, at least make sure everything is filled in, even if you don't know the answer.
Very good. Thank you. Serenity, I appreciate that. Okay, so we're getting through. We're definitely putting some answers. Are you allowed to go back? If you click on one answer, it goes to the next question. At the end, if you finish early, can you go back and check over your work?
Yes, you can review everything.
Okay.
within like one section though. So like each section has a break in between. So there's like 3 breaks in between. So like you can finish like one section at a time and you can go back, but you can't go back into previous sections.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense to me. All right. And everything is multiple choice. There's no fill in the blank. There's no writing, no essay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now do they let you have, when I took it, they would give, it's like a slippery piece of paper that you have a dry erase marker. That was all. We had a slippery piece of paper that you could write a dry erase marker, and that was all we were allowed to have. Are you allowed to have different items? Yes, they still have slippery paper.
Yeah, they give
And
you
dry.
a booklet. They also give you noise canceling headphones and earplugs if you want them, which I really appreciated.
No, that'll be very good, especially if whoever's sitting next to you is taking a less strenuous test that they don't dedicate their entire life to, and they're like making noises. So that's good. But when you took the MCAT, was everybody there to also take the MCAT?
Everyone that I heard say what test they were taking were also taking the MCAT.
Okay. Were you allowed to have a calculator?
No.
Your
I think
brain
the
was the
testing
calculator.
thing.
Go
I
ahead.
think the testing thing, also based on the center because when I took it, it was like there was like random people taking like completely other like tests. So I think it
Okay,
depends,
so
but
it
like yeah, a lot
depends
of
on the
them.
center.
But a lot of them were MCAT, but like maybe like 75% or like half of them, but not all of them, at least from what I heard. Yeah. So I think it just depends.
Well, hopefully it's all tests that are serious and nobody's goofing around or singing or chewing gum. Okay. Does anybody who has an MCAT coming up have any questions for those who just recently took it or those who took it back in 2010?
Oh, yes, I do have an exam. I mean, sorry, a question, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
This is for anyone who has just taken the MCAT. Is it okay if you could possibly share like your learning schedule, how like your study schedule for the MCAT, what topics you're studying and like your time blocks as well?
I don't think I'm the best person to answer this because I only used Khan Academy, but they have videos and practice questions, and I just systematically made my way through all those.
Okay, thank you so much. And how long did you put aside time to study for? Did you think like that was enough?
I only did about half an hour to an hour a day, and I don't think that was enough, but that was just me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I have a question. For those who just took it or have already taken it, did you guys do content review and then do questions, or did you just go straight into questions? Because I'm struggling with the whole content review part.
The first time I took it, I did all content review, and then this is the second time I've done it, and I did like half and half. And I think it's definitely worth doing the practice questions because it gets you in that mindset of answering questions and reading everything very carefully.
Yeah, I would say like I kind of so I took it before and so I'm like studying for it again like coming up in a little bit. But I would say like I know some people will do like content review for like a month or two and then like go into questions. So you could do it like that, but I yeah, definitely like what Serenity said, like not Serenity, sorry, Elizabeth said, you definitely do have to do practice problems just because like it helps you get in the mindset of like reading so much every because you're reading like almost like 7 to 9 passages or something like every section, right? So it's just like you get tired and like you keep getting questions wrong sometimes because of that. So I feel like it helps to build your stamina a lot versus like content review doesn't do that as much because you're just kind of like passively reading. So like I've heard like people use, but like I know that like if a problem for you is like remembering content that you learned like weeks ago, I know people use flashcards called Anki. And they're kind of on Reddit, and you can get like flashcard decks that people have like made with like topics sectioned off. So like if you're using like the Kaplan books, they're all sectioned off by like Kaplan chapter one, blah blah blah. And you can kind of just like go through each one as you do them, and then that kind of like helps you remember it so that you're not forgetting stuff you learned when you first started studying. And then like for practice problems, people use this thing called UWorld. It's kind of expensive, so I wouldn't buy it until you start doing the practice problems, but it's like super helpful. There's like 4,000 questions on it, and I didn't get through it the whole thing. But I'm trying to do that the next time I take it because like it's like super helpful and super similar to the actual MCAT.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Oh, I just have another question for Sri, sorry. When you were studying for the NCAT, did you do it while undergrad or did you take time during your summers to study?
So I I started kind of like halfway through the summer, and then like finished it up like during fall semester and then took it in January. The thing
Mhm.
for me is like a lot of people have the timeline of like, oh, like I did it in like 3 months, so I did like content review for half of that, and then like practice problems for half of that. But like I can't be, I'm not that fast. So like
Mhm.
this next time that I'm taking it, I'm kind of spreading it out over like 5 months. So like you
Mhm.
have like X amount of chapters or X amount of like videos to watch, and then like X amount of practice problems. Literally like plan it, like make an entire schedule for like your next couple months. Because I like I've heard people get like really overwhelmed over the last month because like you realize like you're not like where you're at.
Mhm.
But if you like plan it out and then plan out like enough time for like leeway, so like if you are busy or something, you like can still catch back up. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And sorry, for Sri and Elizabeth, is it okay if I could also contact you after this meeting just to have more a bit more questions about preparing for the MCAT as well?
For
Thank,
sure.
thank you so much.
I'll put my number in the chat, and then I don't know, like you can email me or just like text me if anyone else wants to. I'm not the best person because I didn't get the score I wanted, but like I've heard I know about how people study if that helps. And kind of like I can talk about my experience, but don't ask me for like test taking strategies because I'm not at the score I want yet. So
Well, I think that the study and test taking strategies will be different depending on the person. I am a big believer in neurons that fire together, wire together. So I was all about recreating the exact testing environment. Like I went there and like looked around and recreated at home the exact like chair and posture and setup. And I was all about taking the exact everything the same as the real MCAT. So I didn't just do like blocks of questions here and there. Well, of course I did when I first started studying, but my real serious studying was sitting down and taking an entire practice MCAT. And I took 36 8-hour entire practice MCATs. Because I'm a nutcase. Yes. And if you guys go to the Google Classroom, I've uploaded a photo of me from 2009 with all my MCAT study books that are more than half the size of my body, if anybody cares to look. So I was all about recreating the exact study environment, the same number of breaks, the same minute of breaks. I even got the slippery like paper that they give you with the dry erase marker, like how what I was gonna eat, the music I was gonna listen to on the way there. It's kind of like when you do sports. I don't know if it's necessarily that great from, I don't know, a mental health standpoint, but you get a little superstitious when you do sports, like you have your lucky socks. It was like everything had to be a certain way, and that way had to be as close to the testing environment as possible. And maybe if studying, like sitting upside down in your bed while eating pizza is the way to that you do it, and maybe that works for you. I had to be like in 100% the same. The temperature had to be the same. Like, so I tried to recreate the environment as much as possible. All right. So getting into medical school,
Oh, real quick.
MCAT. Yeah.
Blueprint has one free exam that's the exact same format as the MCAT. You can pay for more exams, but I refuse to pay for extra stuff. But it is
Well,
really helpful.
yeah, I mean, you can definitely go to each company and I'm sure they'll give you a couple free samples. And if you go to enough companies, you could probably get enough free ones. Um, but I went wild and somehow found 36 full practice MCATs and took all of them. That's 36 8-hour days, people. I remember this. I would wake up and take it, and then I would watch. Yes, I would watch one episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and there was one song I would listen to. That's the more you describe it, it sounds like pretty crazy. But you have to be crazy to take the MCAT, right? Like the amount of studying that goes into that is like out of this world. But it worked because here I sit with a medical degree. So whatever I did it right. But yeah, it was a lot of studying. But sometimes maybe people things come easier to some people than others. So you have to just find what works for you and roll with that. Now, aside from the MCAT, oh, please go ahead.
Sorry. Dr. Waggel, I was wondering, so you said that you graduated a year early from undergrad, correct?
Yeah.
That is also my plan, is to graduate a year early. And I was just wondering, I don't know if you already addressed this before, but did you take the MCAT after the 3 years of undergrad, like right then, or did you wait until like another year and then take the MCAT?
Well, it was very confusing. Because as everybody knows, you can't just apply for medical school and then go in the fall. It's like I feel like it was a 2-year long endeavor. Because I had to sign up for, do you guys still use the AMCAS like computer system where like you sign in and it tells you all the stuff that you have to do throughout the years? And so because they informed me, I don't know why it was such a surprise because I was literally taking more than double the classes that my roommates were. But when they informed me that I would be graduating, first of all, my parents didn't believe it because they're like, don't they want our money? Like, why would they be done with you to squeeze cash? I mean, my parents like were kind of like thinking I was joking until they sent like the graduation announcements and stuff. So it was hard to plan medical school when it was like, surprise, you have an undergraduate degree. So yeah, when I found out I was graduating early, like I couldn't just go to medical school because like you can't do that. Like you can't just go to medical school. It has to be this years long endeavor. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll just go to graduate school. So then I signed up to get my Master of Science. Well, first, Master of Science in Biology is the long one. A Master of Arts in Biology is the short one. And you can graduate at your own pace, but I think I was the only person in my program to graduate from that in a year because most people took 2 years. So I graduated from that early too. So I'm not like a good person to ask about like the planning of when to take the MCAT because at all times I never really I knew what the next degree I was going to get was. But I feel like I remember studying over the summer, and I did take it more than once because I wanted to get a higher score. I feel like I was always studying for the MCAT, like through undergrad and graduates. I feel like there was never a time I wasn't studying MCAT. So yeah, because I graduated early, it really like confused the whole plan. But it was so funny when my graduation announcements came out. Everybody's like, huh? Like it confused everybody. So is there like a Shri? Is there like a bet like I think that you're supposed to take your MCAT your junior year, but my junior year was like also my sophomore year. Like it got so confusing. It was like, which was my junior year? I don't really know. Did somebody answer in the chat? Around $300. I know that. I don't see this Dr. Waggle's getting confused with the group chat and the questions that are being asked out loud.
Sorry.
The
I
question
asked a
that was
separate
asked out
question.
loud. Okay, the question that was asked out loud was when should you take the MCAT? And my answer is I don't know because I don't even know what year was my sophomore year or what year was my junior year. It was all just this very condensed of classes. All right, so we're having a side conversation about fees, which is great. And I encourage you guys to utilize the group chat that was started for these questions, but we must focus on the people speaking out loud. And the people speaking out loud, I think, wanted to know when you take the MCAT. So someone else speaking out loud should answer when should you take the MCAT.
I took mine my junior year, but the score is also good for 3 years, I believe.
So can you take it your sophomore year? Do people do that?
I generally people try to take it after they take the biochemistry class is what I've heard. Because that's yeah. So Yeah, so that's kind of
So
like
it
the biggest
has to
one.
do with when you take your biochem.
Yeah, so I took it in the first semester of my junior year, which is why I took the MCAT right after that in January, because it was like still fresh in my head. But if you take it in sophomore year, then yeah, theoretically you could take the MCAT in sophomore year.
Okay. Well, I guess if I did a normal 4-year undergraduate degree and I had to pick between taking it sophomore year and junior year, I think it would be better to take junior year because you'd have more of the science classes by then, right?
Yeah, typically people also like to take it after they've taken organic chemistry as well. Usually that's what you're during your second year of university.
Okay. Well, it's nice to know what normal people do because I just like condensed everything into one like quick blob. Okay, so for those of you that want to go to medical school, it sounds like you should plan to take the MCAT in junior year. And then there will probably be questions about gap years. Does anybody want to out loud talk about gap years or anything else before we move on to the other requirements? Because this is all about oral participation. And speaking of auditory, and different schools, otolaryngologists go to medical school and audiologists go get their PhDs. So that's another example of like psychology, psychiatry, ophthalmology, and optometry. So I thought of another example because I want everybody to hear and speak. Can somebody speak out loud about whether you want to move past the MCAT or we still have MCAT questions? I know everybody loves replying to my oral questions in the chat, but I like to hear you.
I personally don't have any more MCAT questions, but I don't know about the rest of the group.
I did
My
ask an MCAT question. Sorry, because you did say you did about like 36 to 38 hours, correct? And I was just asking, like, in a span of months, how many months was that?
Well, it wasn't 38 hours. It was
Oh,
36 8-hour exams.
Okay, 30. Oh, wow.
Yes. The more I talk about this, the crazier it seems. I feel like I studied 4 years. I don't, maybe I blocked it. I think, Sri, I think that people probably just take the 3 months of their summer and just devote that to studying for the MCAT, but I don't know. It would probably have to do with your schedule and what availability you had. If you're doing classes over the summer, that might be pretty hard to pull off. But what else goes into your medical school application aside from the dreaded MCAT?
Letters of recommendation.
Yes.
Oh,
Secondary.
well, very good. So letters of recommendation, I've given you guys tips about this, is that now that I'm finally a PI / attending / preceptor / whatever word that you want to use for the person in charge, it's really hard to keep track of everybody. I don't think that was a problem for me because I am just like so loud and outgoing that all of the professors knew who I was, mostly because I didn't shut up during class. I obviously was very big into participation, but a lot of times your preceptor or professor like doesn't know who you are because there's 200 people in a class. So if you want to eventually ask somebody for a letter of recommendation, you've got to at least go to like office hours a couple times and meet them face to face and let them know who you are, or they're going to write you the most generic letter of recommendation on the face of the earth. And you don't want that because the people at the medical school reading the letters of recommendation are going to read tens of thousands of them. And if it's just generic, then that's not going to do you any service. All right. So we had MCAT and then we had letter of recommendation. And what else?
Secondaries.
Okay. Well, tell me what these secondaries are.
Secondaries are basically the essays you get after you've submitted your primary application.
Ah, yes, this is all coming back to me. Secondary, somewhere in between primary and tertiary. I doubt there's a tertiary, right? They stop you at 2.
Well, there's interviews, which I guess is the third step, but they don't call them tertiaries. Yeah.
The tertiaries. I like that though. Okay, so the first part is just submitting all the paperwork, which includes your grades and your MCAT scores. Is this correct?
And also the personal statement.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. So your primary is your personal statement, your MCAT score, and your grades, like your transcript. And then the
And your
secondary.
activities.
Oh, well, why did we skip? Can we go back to activities? Can somebody share with me some activities that the medical school admissions department would either like or dislike? Surely jail time would probably be one that they dislike, but let's have some examples of activities that they do like.
Maybe like a
Some activities they
pre-medical
do would like
club.
would like clinical activities. Oh, sorry.
No, wait, I heard a new voice and I'm excited about it. Was that Carter?
Yes, it is.
Please
So
tell me what you were saying.
there's like some schools have this, but like a pre-medical club, like that talk about that you learn about like how to get into med school and stuff like that. I feel like that would look really good on a like in your application to med school.
All right. That makes sense. And not only would it look good on your application, being in that club would help you figure out what to put on your application, huh?
Exactly.
Not to cut
All
Carter
right.
off, but me and Carter are actually a part of the Virginia Tech chapter of our pre-med club. So
Absolutely.
Whoa.
any of you go to Virginia Tech, you should totally join.
Oh, yeah, I agree. It sounds like a fun club. Okay,
Yeah.
so you can put that on. Oh, very nice. You can put that on your transcript and then you guys can meet and talk about what else to put on your transcript. So, research, that's usually a good one, right?
Yes, research is awesome.
And then volunteering in an actual hospital or doctor's office. I hear that they quite like that.
Any clinical hours that you do, like as a CNA or medical assistant, stuff like that?
Right. And I heard some of you are like EMTs and pharmacy techs and things. I'm sure that that would look very good. All right. So are the letters of recommendation part of the secondary along with the essays?
It's part of the primary.
Ah, okay. Now, back to letters of recommendation. I distinctly remember it really coming down to the wire for me to get one because I had a professor who was quite the procrastinator and kept saying, I'll get it, I'll get it, I'll get it. Is it possible? How many letters of recommendation are now necessary? And is it possible to get more than necessary in the event that one of your letter writers ghosts on you?
Yeah, so there's this website that people generally use to get rec letters called Interfolio, and that's usually where you can store them. So whether you're applying now and you just took a class with the professor and they have you fresh in their brain, you can ask them to write a rec for you, even if you're applying like a year down the road, which is really convenient. And that's what I did for some professors. So that's really helpful. So you can
Yes,
literally
I
have as
have
many
an
on
account
there.
with Interfolio for letters of recommendation that I've written. And you know what? You're right about that. Everybody write this down, what Sri said about asking your letter writer after you finish up with them, because I have taught hundreds of students and sometimes they come back years later and I'm like, I don't know who you are. And what the worst is if they don't have their hour log. And I'm like, I am a very busy physician. There is no way that I'm going to have time to go through all my emails and figure out what it is that you did. That's why we have the hour log, so that when you ask for a letter of recommendation, it's all there in one convenient form. So Shree's very smart in asking her letter writers at the time they finish up instead of 2 years later. So that was a good point, Shree. Interfolio. Okay. Now, The secondary is just essays, and if so, is it different essays for different schools?
Yeah, normally they focus more on the school itself. So, like, I guess, oh, why do you want to go here? And so you could look at their website, look at their programs, and kind of get a better idea on how you would make a good fit to their school.
That I distinctly remember that. You can't just be like, I don't know anything about Wyoming, but I thought that it was a cool place and here I am. Like you need you need to establish a connection. I understand. Okay, and then you have the interviews, which if I have been reading my emails correctly, either practicing has begun or is shortly to begin for y'all to have your interview skills tested out.
Yep, they start today at 7.
Yeah, so it's coming up. And you know what I think is going to be a great way to help you guys practice your interview skills is to respond and participate. Yes. I feel like a lot of people who are really smart and good at science also happen to be shy. And so it would be in your best interest to be outgoing now where you will not be judged harshly or critically. I know that when people were late, I'm like, woo, like, but I don't mean anything by it, but they will mean something by it. Like that professor I had who made everybody sign in and sign out and kept track of how long people were in the bathroom. So I would really practice your public speaking skills now. Because medical school is, at least the second half is like all public speaking. It's rounding, which you give patient presentations in front of people, sometimes in front of the patient. So being able to speak and feel comfortable answering questions out loud. Now, it may be, I swear I'm not that old, but it's just this generation. I feel you guys are a little bit different because of the whole COVID thing, you know? And so things are done much differently than they were whenever I was doing my interviews and stuff. I mean, we didn't have the option for virtual interviews back in 2009. Like, I don't even know if we had smartphones back in 2009. I think we had to take pictures on Kodak cameras and then go get the film developed at the mall. I think that the people who are interviewing you are going to be people my age and older. You have to remember that. Like, there's not going to be any Gen Zs interviewing you for medical school. And so whatever it is that I do and say, you have to remember that I probably represent the youngest group of people who are going to be interviewing you, and they might not get the whole ghosting that you guys kind of do, or everything is like over email and not out loud. You just have to remember who your audience is. And so if you know any millennials, hang out with them a little bit, or even crazier, if you can even find one, Gen X. I know, like, you can't find a Gen X. You may even get interviewed by some boomers. So if you want to hang out with some older individuals and see what it is that they expect, that might be good for managing expectations, because they might not get this generational disconnect that has occurred, and some of the things that you do may actually offend them. So one example is when I did interviews, I hand wrote and mailed at the post office thank you letters to everyone who interviewed me. It was expected, and it would actually be detrimental to you to not do this. Now, I would assume at some point emailing became acceptable, but now my understanding is that your generation doesn't even thank interviewers or the people that you work with at all. And so I guess I personally don't care, but old school attendings or professors or people that are interviewing you might care. So I personally would recommend at least sending a thank you email to the people who wrote your letters of recommendation and to the people who are interviewing you. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, one suggestion I would have for like interviewing, because I feel like even for like job interviews too, it's like whenever you're like a good way to practice is maybe with like friends or like your parents or something, so you can learn how to like navigate certain questions. And another thing, like earlier we were mentioning extracurriculars, um, it's important to obviously show that you do research, you do clinical hours, but also bring up like your own interests. Like if you dance or sing or you draw or you're part of these clubs, like make sure you add that too. So like if it comes up in an interview, you can be like really passionate and talking about it, and maybe they even like that, like a book you're reading or something. So that could.
Oh yeah, that would be the ultimate win if you guys are reading the same book too. Yes, because you want to show that you're genuinely passionate, and if you start talking about things that you don't actually like, it's going to be obvious that you aren't truly excited about that. So that's a very good point. Talk about your own interests so that you can demonstrate genuine interest in things. Another piece of advice that I have is to have one anecdote from each experience. So I worked in a geriatrician's office, and I worked in the hospital called a hospital elder life program. I also worked in a neuropsychometrist department. So every experience that you have, you should have memorized at least one story from that experience. That way, if they ask you about this experience, because you have to think quickly, like you're not going to have time to sit there and run through the database in your brain. Like you need to have it quick. And so if you have the example that sticks out in your mind about each experience, then whenever they ask you a question about it, you're going to be able to reply quickly instead of fumble around and like they ask you something and you're just like, oh. Yeah, take notes and journal what it is that you're doing. So what, like something Dr. Waggle taught me XYZ. And then whenever you've completed this experience and they ask you about it, you'll be able to just go right to that. All right. So we talked about the MCAT, and there's not much to say about grades other than have good grades. It's just, you got to get good grades. Now, back when I applied to medical school, you basically had to have all A's in everything. And so I understand that now, especially in high school, the GPA can go above a 4.0. Is that true in college, or is college still the highest grade point average you can get is 4.0? Or now are they giving bonus points in college too?
It's
I'm
up
not sure for other colleges, but still 4.0 for mine.
Yeah, same.
Okay, so 4.0 is still the highest. So basically, when I applied to medical school, your only option was to have a 4.0. That was just it. I think that's changed. My understanding is now you can have, like, what do you guys think is, and then it's also very difficult because what if you go to a school where everything's easy and you have a 4.0, but then you go to a school where everything's hard and you have a 3 something? Like, so this is kind of a difficult question, but what do you think is the lowest? So we established the lowest MCAT score that you could get and get into medical school is 504. What do you guys think the lowest GPA is that you could have and still somehow get into medical school?
I feel like 3.7, maybe 6.
Now, I guess if it's 3.6 and you go to a very prestigious, and it's, I feel like some prestigious schools you could easily get. So it's hard because like the people reading your application might not know how difficult your school is. But in terms of grade point average, my advice would be just as high as you can get it.
I've heard like one big thing is like even if it's low, as long as you have like an upward grade trend, that's like really good apparently. Like, yeah, like Riley just texted about it, but like if you have like a 4.0 for your last 2 years and like a 3.4 or something, they'll like see the difference and like you as a person, you're now getting the 4.0 and you're not whoever you were when you were getting the lower grades. So
Okay, that's good. That's definitely better than starting out with a 4.0 and then decreasing from there. So we might have a shot if we have a 3.5, but probably no lower.
I
yeah,
think
I've heard if it's low.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, you're good.
I was gonna say, I think it honestly depends on your MCAT score and the schools you apply to, because I've talked to some admissions people and they've said like 3.2 is okay as long as you have a really good MCAT score and you have a compelling personal statement. So it depends on a variety of things.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that's good to know, especially for the silent people here I am sure that there are people in this call right now who are learning a lot, but are just very quiet about it. Now let's see. So I think that this book, too bad they don't print it out. I guess they're just trying to save trees. But this MSAR is just like so cool and full of information. So it goes through each and every school. Like I just randomly opened to University of Connecticut School of Medicine. And it goes like general information, mission statement, how well those medical students do on the USMLE. Which, in case you don't know, that's like the steroided up version of the MCAT. And there are 4 of them, but they divide step 2 into 2. I don't know why they don't do 1, 2, 3, 4, but they do 1 and then 2.1 and then 2.2 and 3. I don't know why they come up with these numbers, but there are 4 of them. And so if you love the MCAT, you're going to love the USMLE. So when choosing a medical school, do you think that you want to choose a school where the students have good USMLE scores or bad USMLE scores?
Good ones.
Yes. It would be better for you to go to a school that prepares you for the next step, that prepares you well for residency. And so some other things, it really has neat charts and it goes through like their GPA would be 3.8. I guess there must have been some people. I had a 4.0, so I don't know what other people were doing. But it says you could probably get in with a 3.8. I just everybody I knew who went to medical school had a 4.0, so like I just remember it being so hard. And I assume it's still so hard. Is it like still considered to be the hardest graduate school to get into?
Yes.
Okay, so at least something hasn't changed in 14 years. And then it actually goes through like what percentage of class are men, what percentage of women, and like the tuition, that's important. And it has really good statistics. Some of these programs have combined programs, like for example, University of Connecticut was just what I happened to open the book to. It says they don't have an MD-JD program, which I always thought would be so cool. I do know. I have a really good friend that has MD-JD, but the University of Connecticut does have a combined MD-PhD program. And so if you haven't downloaded the version of the MSAR yet, I would do it because it just has such valuable information and it can help you to pick what school you want to go to, and it can help you to know what that school is looking for in their applicants. Oh, here's Georgetown. So they also have an MD PhD program and an MD MBA program. Very fancy. So if you really want to get crazy and have multiple degrees, that's something that you could do as well. All right. So I think that a lot of people had questions specifically about the MCAT, which I hope were answered today. I can only answer them based on my experience, but I'm glad Sri was here, and Elizabeth and Serenity, you guys also took the MCAT, right?
No, I haven't, but I take mine in December.
Okay. Well, you sound like you know a lot about it, so that's a good it's a good sign. Okay. Well,
Thank you.
I'm glad that we could talk about that. Hopefully there's some good take-home points. Basically, to recap, the most important things to take out of our talk today was to download the medical school admission requirements, MSAR, to have a memorized anecdote that really does truly mean something to you for every experience you've had. So that way, when you get interviewed, it's just something that you could free flow, easily talk about during the interview, sound really, really articulate, not to stumble, because if you don't have that anecdote in your mind, then when they ask you about your research from 2002, you're not like, oh. And then also just I recommend trying to recreate the environment of the testing facility as much as possible. However, like I said, if you do the best studying upside down eating pizza, that's your prerogative. All right. What do you guys think?
This was really helpful, so thank you.
Good, good. I'm glad. I want everybody to get into medical school or podiatry school. Or I'll try to get some other people who are not MDs in. If there's enough people who are like, oh, I want to know what a PA does or how to get into PA school, because I can't answer that. But if there's enough interest in other specialties, then I can look into that too. Maybe have a guest speaker from outside the realm of medical school, if you guys want. All right. It was nice talking. Well, it was nice reading your group chats, but it was nice talking to some of you. Yay!
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, Dr. Waggle.